Welcome to this week's episode. I'm Paula Williams.
I'm John Williams.
And we are ABCI, and ABCI's mission is...
help you folks out there sell more of your products and services if you're in aviation.
Right, exactly. And part of that is developing new products, right, and services. And also keeping your people healthy, happy, employed, and so on. And so this is dedicated to the bosses and the employees who are sometimes at odds with each other, but shouldn't be. We're going to tell a story about a project where we did a Skunkworks thing almost accidentally. Wow. Actually, it became very deliberate before the end.
Yes, it did.
And we knew we were either going to get fired or promoted. We ended up being a little bit of both, so... But it was a great time, and it was so much more fun than quiet quitting. You know, this.
Oh yeah.
This 3-part series we're working on right now. We started with what quiet quitting is and our proposed response to it, which is Skunkworks. You know, if your people are feeling uninspired or unappreciated, or if you are a person who is feeling uninspired or unappreciated, you don't have to toe the corporate line. Sometimes stepping outside the lines is what makes companies successful, right?
Without dragging your feet. Go ahead and do your normal job like you're supposed to.
Oh, yeah.
And then help out.
Exactly. So,
for fun.
Right. Coming back to what the problem is, you know, doing the bare minimum with your job, which results in boredom, low pay, no incentive, lack of fulfillment, lack of creativity, lack of being able to bring your true, authentic self to work. I don't think I ever brought my true, authentic self to work when I was working for a large corporation, and they probably wouldn't want me to.
Well, when we did this job, you were doing that.
That's true. It was a good time. So quiet quitting is a losing proposition for everyone. So I wanted to tell a story about something that happened with us working for a large corporation that I can now name because it doesn't exist anymore. First Security Bank was a financial institution in Salt Lake City. We need to understand that at the time, because when we tell you what the project was, you'll think, oh, that was easy. But it wasn't, because this was the late 1990s. So you have to remember what we had to work with at the time, right? Mm-hmm. There was no SharePoint. There was no... Slack, there was no Basecamp, there was nothing in terms of collaborative tools.
No.
At all. In fact, the internet at First Security Bank looked like this. I got this from the Wayback Machine, or the Internet Archive. It was barely a website, or barely what we would consider a website by today's standards. And this was a fairly large company. And this is what we did, is we had a kind of a brochure-like website, and it had a banner at the top, which is broken, but the rest of it is, we had this rotating slider, you know, with the states that were served by First Security Bank on the side. We were so proud of that.
By today's standards, it wasn't, you know, when you talk about Apple as $1 trillion company and Google and those like that, but at the time, $44 billion was respectable. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. So we barely had business banking on here. Internet home banking was in its infancy. But the website was basically just a front end for a kludgy back end.
Yeah.
It was really, really horrible. But nobody knew anything about internet. The people who were running First Security Bank at the time had become successful by being very conservative business people in a very conservative business environment.
In a paper environment.
In a paper environment. You know, they were not technology people. None of them, I think.
I don't think there was anybody there.
Exactly.
Except the youngsters they hired to put servers in and start to try to build it.
Right, exactly. So my job at the time was document control and document version control and that kind of thing. And so this was an almost unmanageable task at the time. You know, what we were doing is every department had its own version of different forms and things. And so they would just pull them up off somebody's hard drive. And if somebody needed a form, you would ask around. the people around your desk saying, do you have a form for this? And they would say, yes, I have one. And they would pull one out of their email from 3 years ago and they would send it to you. And then you would fill it out and send it on to the next person. There were many, many, many different versions of many, many, many different forms, some of which were legally required. And it was a mess. It was a total mess. And we had a lot of rework and a lot of crap that had to happen with, sending documents back to people because they had to be redone on the current form and blah, 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 blah. They were not happy. So talking with John about this, and John was actually a consultant with another firm, so we were brainstorming ideas about how to solve this problem. And of course, you had some ideas and I had some ideas. I'd put together a very rudimentary web page of my own. Of course, we were working on First Security's very rudimentary website. So we kind of knew what the internet could do. And so, our idea was basically to put together an intranet, an internal on the local network, document library. That was all it was going to be.
And nobody that could authorize it would authorize it.
Right. They had a room like this, populated with guys who were in their 60s and 70s who had never seen, who were successful because they had always dealt with paper and handshakes. Mm-hmm. And they knew nothing about technology. And so I would go before the TRC, the Technology Review Committee, and propose this idea, and they would blink and look at me like I was from Mars, right? And they'd say, well, you need to do more research. So then I would go back and find some examples of companies that had done this, and and Gartner Group and Forrester Research and everything else, and put together
business reviews.
Yeah, some beautiful binders of stuff, and give them to them every week. And they would come up with different questions every week. And I would be, that would be behind the red tab in the big binder of information I've already given you. There's the answer to that question. And they would say, yes, well, and they would, scratch their head and hem and haw and everything else and say, okay, but we have this specific question that needs to be answered. And of course, there wasn't a ton of information out there that I could give them at the time. And so John and I were talking about this, and you said,
well,
they don't need more research. They just don't understand it, and they will never admit it.
I probably did say that.
Exactly. And I'm like, why didn't they just say so? But they would never admit it because this is not what made them successful in the past.
That's right.
Okay. So this is what happened, right? Mm-hmm. We decided that it's easier to show than tell. And we also decided that it is easier to get forgiveness than permission.
Well, and part of the thing was that by virtue of what I was contracted to do, I ended up knowing all the techies. Mm-hmm. And, I would come to work at 7 in the morning and wouldn't leave till 7 in the evening, but I would only bill them for a maximum of 8 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And when I talked to people, and they said that was okay because I wanted to be able to talk, have coffee with people, get to know what's going on. Well, when she came up with this idea, I just asked a couple of guys one morning at coffee, said, you guys have an extra server that you're not using yet that she could use? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, let me look. Mm-hmm. And they came and said, we have 3. I said, really? Well, I need 1. Mm-hmm. And if you need it in the process of this,
let me know and we'll kill what we're doing and carry on. So this was a totally underground project. None of the management knew what we were doing.
And the techies loved it.
Exactly. And, they felt like they were in on something. It was a really cool, it was a lot of fun actually, working on this. So, in the process of doing research for the Technology Review Committee, I would meet with the heads of each department in the name of research and say, theoretically, if we had an intranet, what would you like to have on it? And so this was a teaching position or a marketing position, actually, because I was asking them, what would you like to have on an intranet if we had one? And they would say, what's an intranet? And I would explain to them, these are the kinds of things that we can do with this. You can put your forms on there so everybody has the latest. You can put somebody in charge of the documents, you can control the information that gets disseminated through your department.
Right.
So then they would give me a wish list of this is what I would like to have on it if you were to do something like this at some point in the future. So then we would go back with our little team of pirates and put this together under cover of darkness. Not really darkness. There's always plenty of time in the workday to sneak in a thing here and a
Especially
thing
if you're
there.
there 12 hours and only have to work for 8.
Right. I wasn't. I was actually checking in and out on time because I had a kid that I needed to get home to.
Yeah, I know.
But I was working through lunches and, doing other things. And there's never enough work, when you're working for a large organization.
To keep you busy.
To keep you busy 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I was pre-selling this product that we were building while getting the data that I needed. And, I was asking them, so who actually has the copies of those documents that would be current? Who would you put in charge of this? And so then I would get in touch with that person and work with that person and say, what can I do to make your life easier with a tool like this in the name of research? If we were theoretically to do this, right?
Yeah, and you did that with every department.
Every department in the bank.
That's right.
And it was a, decent sized bank. So this took months.
It took the better part of a year, I think.
Yeah, the better part of a year. That is true.
But you got it all done.
Mm-hmm. So, we prototyped it, we put it together, and quietly, to those people, those heads of departments told us would be in charge of documents, we quietly rolled it out. We said, try this out, see what you like and you dislike about it, let us fix it, let us add to it, let's do whatever you need to do to make your job easier. And they started using it. Right?
Oh, once they figured it out, they wouldn't have it any other way.
Exactly. And so pretty soon, the Technology Review Committee was finding out that there was an intranet in use in their department, whatever department it was that they were the head of, right? And one of the things that they do when a merger and acquisition is say, where's all your documentation? This way, all they had to do was send them to the intranet. As opposed to having every department collect all their documents.
Yeah, you'd already done it for them.
Exactly. So that made the whole process 1,000 times easier. Little did they know they were being helped by something that they didn't know anything about.
Right.
So the TRC, if they had known that we were doing this at the time, they probably would have been livid, some of them. Some of them would have been amused. Some of them would have shrugged their shoulders and said it will not amount to anything.
Yeah, well, but one of the things Wells liked about it was the fact that it was there and populated.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And we got a bonus. So
yeah, you got a bonus.
Yep, you were a contractor, so you couldn't get a bonus. Nope. But you got more jobs at the bank after that. So that was a wonderful thing. And everybody who was involved with it ended up getting rewarded in one way or another because they looked really good during the merger and acquisition process.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Yeah. And we had documented everything and named everybody, who helped with it and gave credit where credit was due. And it was a really good
She
project.
ended up with a document folder, one of those 3-inch document folders.
Yeah.
Completely documented everything.
Mm-hmm.
And,
what we did, how we did it, why we did it.
And after the merger went through, or the acquisition, actually, no, there's no such thing as a merger. But anyway, after the acquisition, I told her, I said, you ought to send that to your new boss in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. She did, and the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and that worked out really, really well. And that also helped because I wanted to work remote from Salt Lake City, and the job moved to San Francisco.
That's right.
But I wanted my team to be able to work remote from Salt Lake City, and the argument that we made was, you know what? We're disaster recovery, right? You can't have all of your web people in San Francisco. What if something happened? So anyway, having an intranet was a benefit to the company and to everybody who was involved with it. But it did take some piracy to get it done.
Yeah, but it was well thought out and well acted and well enacted.
It was a good time.
Oh, yeah.
And so much more fun. If I had not done this,
You'd have gone nuts.
I would have gone nuts. I would have been quiet quitting, I would have been showing up on time, drudging through my 8 hours and leaving at the end of the day. But what made the difference was I was able to feel like I was getting away with something, which is always fun. Put a team together that was having a good time and that really felt like they were contributing to something.
And it was all a non-existent team that existed.
Yeah, making people's jobs easier. You know, all of these department heads or all of these department document people who now found it easier to do their jobs. And, you know, that's really what people work for, I think, is to feel like they're contributing something.
And you may not be able to put an intranet together, but if you look around, I'm sure you can find something like that.
Exactly. So in our next episode, we're going to talk about how to become your own Skunkworks project or make your own Skunkworks project, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you for joining us and have a great week.
Stay safe and healthy and see you later.